Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Jeff Charles, James Fight, Sarah Cowgill, and Andrew Moran. And this is the Conservative 5, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. On today's episode, it's déjà vu all over again, the not patriotic midnight ride of migrants, where we discuss Joe Biden's underage shipping of immigrants. Supermarket Sweep, a 2021 reality TV show. The shelves are downright bare of all things we love best. How long can we expect disappointment in aisle 3? Public schools get a big fat F. Parents are pulling their kids out of government schools at an alarming rate. Is it the pandemic, the vaccines, the mask mandates, the curricula, or all the above? We'll play around in our Just for Kicks segment as we get personal with our C5 panel this week. You're not going to want to miss that one. And finally, exclusively for our Member Zone subscribers, New York City declares racism a public health issue. All this and more on this edition of the Conservative 5. The Biden administration has created one disaster after another in the desire to overturn anything former President Trump put into place. But all those Scranton Joe special touches are beginning to alarm a lot of folks out there. Take, for instance, the latest tactic employed to make illegal immigrants simply vanish into thin air with a wink and a nod. Instead of sending hopeful illegals back to Mexico to wait their turn in the pop-up tent court, Mr. Biden is shipping plane loads of migrants on midnight flights to locations around the country. This behavior naturally seems a bit shady to many Americans. The New York Post observed 2 planes at the Westchester County Airport and reported those exiting the aircraft seemed to be young children and teenagers. After digging into flight data, it seems that the last 2 weeks, 2,000 underage and unaccompanied minors have landed at the airport outside white planes. Well, our very own man in the Lone Star State may have something to say about the immigration shuffle under cover of darkness. Jeff, is this going to be the norm? Out of sight, out of mind, crisis averted?
Well, Lisa, it's already been the norm. I mean, you might recall earlier this year, even the activist media was criticizing President Biden because he wasn't allowing reporters to go in and look at the detention facilities. There has been a remarkable lack of transparency when it comes to the migrant crisis, even to the point to where they still refuse to even call it a crisis. I mean, even Chris Magnus, who Biden tapped to be to head up the Customs and Border Patrol, he wouldn't even call it a crisis. He called it a bad situation. I can't remember the exact words he used, but this is the modus operandi of this administration when it comes to immigration. And in this particular issue, it's kind of confusing to me because they did it under cover of night, like you said, but these were children. I would understand being secretive if they were adults that they're just doing the catch and release with and flying them into the country. But when it comes to children, I think most people tend to have a different view towards that. And I don't think that this would be as controversial because when we have the unaccompanied minors, that's always been the issue, getting them with their sponsors or with their families. He was getting criticized because that wasn't happening fast enough. So in this case, I'm not sure why they felt the need to sneak this in. I mean, maybe somebody sees something that I don't see.
Sarah, does it make sense to you that people would want to take possession of their unaccompanied minor or their ward or their sponsorship person at 4 a.m.?
No, none of this makes any sense, except if you look at it in the other direction, which is we're separating children. We've already separated them at the border. We've got to do something with them before somebody busts us on separating children. So they don't want the optics. I mean, if this administration was doing the right thing in the right way, they would do it in the daylight and notify the press.
Andrew, are any migrant immigrants showing up at the Toronto airport?
Well, that was actually a few years ago where a lot of people from South America, they were traveling through the United States and then they snuck into the Canadian border in Quebec. So we did have our own issue from illegal immigrants. But on the issue of children, it must be absolutely terrifying for them to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get on these flights in a place they have no idea where they're even going. So I feel for these kids 100%. I just think that overall, this is part of the whole socialist ideology where Texas is the one that had been suffering the most when it came to the border crisis. But now, because socialism is about equal misery, Joe Biden, he wants the rest of the country to have equal misery with the border crisis. He's spreading this illegal immigration and this migrant surge to New York, to the East Coast, to the West Coast, everywhere across the country. So no longer is Texas the one going through this. Everybody's going through this. And actually, as a matter of fact, Senator Ted Cruz, he recently introduced a bill wanting illegal immigrants to go to Democratic communities. So that would perhaps encourage Democrat voters or Democratic politicians finally to tackle this issue correctly.
Yeah, I can just imagine a lot of immigrant kids running around the Upper West Side. Jim, what's happening in Arkansas? Any secret plane loads of children coming your way?
Well, I don't think there are any secret plane loads here. But, Jeff raised a good question. If one of the issues has been the whole kids in cages thing, well, why isn't this being shouted from the rooftops? And I think the reason is that this is just a matter of trying to make the whole issue go away, the bigger border security issue. This is just a symptom of a much larger issue. So, the Democrats, Joe Biden, Democrats in Congress, and then, of course, anyone who ever admitted to voting for Biden have kind of backed themselves in a corner. So they've said, oh, there's no crisis for so long that now the only real choices left are to either say, okay, hey, look, there was a crisis, we're wrong, and either let's get some help, or here's what we're doing to solve it. Or, what they're actually doing is just keep on playing that fiddle while Rome burns, so to speak, and try to make as much of this go away as possible while nobody's paying attention.
Sarah, politically speaking, that's a good point, Jim, but politically speaking, did the Biden administration and the, Jen Psaki and all those people really think they were going to get away with this, that nobody was going to notice that plane loads of migrant kids were being taken all around the country, flown over all around the country in the dead of the night?
Well, I mean, if you look at the history of the Biden administration and Ms. Psaki and our activist media, they don't report on the stupid things that this administration does. They barely ask any kind of important questions. And so, yeah, they can get away with it as long as, somebody's not like the New York Post sitting out there with their little binoculars and night vision goggles checking things out. And there's just not enough of the media that's not already, complicit with this administration. So you're not going to hear about it. If they don't hear about it, nobody else is going to hear about it.
My question is, how much is this all costing? To charter flights, you're paying for the gasoline, you're housing these you're housing these migrants. I remember seeing a few months ago the cost of housing migrants is costing about $86 million in taxpayer money. So all this is you're subsidizing all this work and all this migration. What's going on? How can the U.S. even afford this at this time?
One thing that I'll say too is that, if this is what they got caught doing, how much stuff are they doing that doesn't get caught because the media doesn't really want to look into it? But I will say that I'm actually glad that they're getting these children to their families or whatever, because the way that they're being treated in these detention centers is atrocious. Wait a
minute. Do you really buy that they are actually meeting up with people? I don't buy that. I think they're just being housed in a different place in New York.
Yeah, I suspect some of them are, but some of them are for sure going to other detention centers and foster homes.
Yeah, these kids they're political pawns, and they're not going to their parents. They're not going to a relative's house. They're going to somebody who will take them in and get a stipend for taking them in. And then sooner or later, everybody's going to get rid of those kids.
Well,
and the foster care is already dreadful.
I think there are children that fall into different categories. But what I'm saying is that the way that they've been treated in the actual detention centers, especially here in Fort Bliss, Texas, they've been subject to sexual assault, undercooked food, lice, all kinds of stuff. The Biden administration has presided over the abuse of these children. So even though I don't necessarily like the way he's handling it, I would rather them be somewhere where they're going to be safe, because it's just immoral.
Well, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris campaigned on the ease of illegal immigrants achieving citizenship, only to backpedal once they got in office and send out the mixed message, you're not welcome here. Thus, it's unsurprising that any confusion has brought nothing but chaos. Thanks, panel. The national supply chain is in the news again. It started last year with a random rush to buy toilet paper. Well, we survived that harrowing experience. Now, with ships in ports waiting for transport and other cargo vessels skulking around for a place to dock, hoarding goods has reached a fever pitch. We often think of hoarding as something only done by doomsday preppers and people on reality TV. But the hoarders nouveau look a lot like you and me, my friends, and stockpiling the latest gadgets, toys, lean cuisine, Snicker bars, and adult beverages. Do we really need to sweep the supermarkets for dry goods and non-perishables? Andrew, is Canada behaving in such an erratic way, or is it just here in the US that we're starting to panic?
We're not yet, but I have seen supermarkets beginning to prepare by placing limits on how much households can buy in certain products. So I'm sure I'm going to stack up on my vegan proteins that I can eat, chicken tofu nuggets, or my wheat gluten sausages. So I'm pretty sure to stock up.
Everybody, a collective.
That's going to give you gas. That's going to give you gas, Andrew.
When I see this happen, though, I mean, I've looked at other countries that are experiencing their own food problems that they've been doing for a long time. So, for instance, Russia, they've been dealing with skyrocketing food inflation for several months now, and the government imposed export taxes on the food they produce and they're going to ship because they want to have more food to stay inside of Moscow. Argentina, they've also been imposing export tax on their own goods. So everyone's preparing. So what I'm concerned about, at least in the United States, is that the administration is going to apply similar policies. So, for instance, they're now limiting how much oil and gas can be exported out of the country. So it wouldn't surprise me if the U.S. government did the same thing in the United States when it comes to food. But overall, Jen Psaki may dismiss this whole thing as nothing about treadmills and how the supply chain is just about delaying your treadmills. But this whole thing is impacting everything. Food, pharmaceuticals, beverages, everything you can think of is being impacted by this problem. But at the same time, even if you get your hands on this beef and chicken, eggs, poultry, whatever the case, you're spending an arm and a leg. If you look at the recent BLS data in September, beef prices were up 20%. A carton of eggs were up 8%. So everything is cost of money. If you're lucky to get your hands on these goods at the supermarket, be prepared to spend a whole lot more. And this problem isn't subsiding anytime soon. All the latest estimates, even consumers, they don't buy what the Fed's saying anymore. The latest Federal Reserve Bank of New York survey of consumer expectations say inflation is going to be another 5.4% for another year. It's going to be more than 4% for the next 3 years. So this whole problem from price inflation and shortages is not going away anytime soon.
All right, but Sarah, they're acting like, well, we're just sitting around waiting for our Gucci handbags. When, our legal affairs editor, Scott Cosenza, went to the local Safeway last week, and he walked in and he said his mouth just dropped. We have a picture of it and we're going to show it. There was absolutely nothing but empty shelves in the produce aisle. This is not Gucci handbags. This is like, can I have a piece of fruit for breakfast?
Well, yeah. Here in the Midwest, I have not seen to any degree any kind of empty shelves. Keep in mind, the population here is a lot lower. Also, keep in mind, I live in a rural area. I just walked next door for Farm Fresh eggs. I'm not going to run out. They have chickens. So, there's a serious advantage to being in a place that is not heavily populated. We're not running into that. I don't know what's going on in Arkansas, but I doubt it's as severe as it is on the big cities or on the coast. It really isn't anything. These are necessities. These are bare necessities of survival. And the only thing I see are prices going up, but the products are still out there.
Jim, I mean, this is crazy. And I've never done this before, but I actually did the unthinkable. I finished my holiday shopping in October. So my birthday's on Halloween, and I actually did all my Christmas shopping before my birthday. Am I the only one scrambling? I mean, you've got small kids. I think this is really troublesome.
We're in the same boat, and my birthday's actually tomorrow. So,
happy birthday!
Happy birthday, old man!
Happy 25th birthday, James.
Yeah, you're turning 18 now. You can vote.
Yeah,
there you go.
Just don't mention anything about those last couple of elections. Yeah. So Sarah made a good point. We're not really seeing a lot of shortages out here in the country. Some things, sure, but what we're seeing is prices go up, And here's the thing. Folks are going to buy what they feel like they want or need. If it costs more, they'll pay more. As far as things not being available, a lot of that's just the reaction. I mean, if we don't have truck drivers, look, if you don't have produce in the city, think about where that produce is grown. We're in the country and we have produce. There's more to it than just the population issue. Doesn't have to travel as far.
If I may interject, Lisa made an excellent point about the whole Christmas shopping before the holiday season even started. You know what? A lot of retailers are doing the exact same thing. They're engaging in a new form of panic buying. It's not so much consumers doing it as much. It's now the retailers who are trying to get their hands on all this different stuff, whether it's food, whether it's lawnmowers, whatever the case it is. And this is going to add even more to the supply chain crisis, because right now it's everyone trying to catch up. So when you have all these new orders, now you're going to have a new problem for trying to catch up to next year. And it's just going to fester and intensify as time goes by. You
know, Andrew, that's a good point. And I actually made this point when we were talking about the ammo crunch a while back. The industry cannot turn on a dime. As consumers, when we say, hey, I want this, what do? We just go out and buy it, right? So if 1 million people decide they want a new TV, what happens? If millions of people decide they need some more ammo, what happens? If you get all these retail level suppliers saying, hey, we've got to panic buy, it's just exacerbating the situation.
All right, but we got two things going on. We've got a supply chain problem and we have inflation. So, the price of beef goes up, right, Jeff? And so you go to your McDonald's and you order a hamburger. Okay, but the homeless guy who usually eats at McDonald's now has to pay $1 more for his hamburger. It doesn't matter to you and me as much as it matters to the poor people. So why is it inflation? And maybe you might want to punt over to Andrew, or you're welcome to it. But, why is it that this is a high class problem?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a very brilliant economist who told me, but this is happening because, people are wanting things and the businesses just aren't able to keep up. That was actually Andrew who told me that. I'm
I would say brilliant, but thank you.
Yeah, but I'm experiencing the same thing here. There's not a lot of empty shelves, but the prices are going up. I wanted some steak the other day. I wanted to buy some steak, so I had to sell my car to go ahead and buy that steak.
And I'd hate to see your car, Jeff.
Well, you might as well sell your car because you can't afford to fill it with gas.
Exactly. And what Jim was saying about ammo is true. I have to call every day to Academy Sports or the local gun store to see if they have ammo in, because it goes that quick. Like, I know when my local store gets their deliveries now because I asked, so that I know when to go in and buy ammo. So it really is hitting everybody hard. But yeah, it is going to hit poor people even harder, especially here in Austin. We have a lot of homeless. So this is a serious issue. This isn't one that Jen Psaki should be trying to downplay. I know that's her job, but at the same time, something has to be done here.
If I may also interject once again, Lisa also made another excellent point. The birthday girl made a good point, was talking about the price of gasoline and running out of it. That's also going to intensify the food price increase going on, because fertilizer, it's trading at an all-time high. Prices are all-time high, and fertilizer stocks, which I've been holding for nearly a decade now, are starting to pay off. That's going up, and because fertilizer is a byproduct of natural gas. Natural gas is up 100% year to date. It's up 150% over the last 12 months. So to produce the food is going to cost even more money. And then you have the other issue where you're trying to get the labor for it, and they're trying to get the labor, and how they're doing it, raising wages, and that gets passed off onto the consumer. And if I make one last point before the segment comes to a conclusion, what you're going through right now is a sign of stagflation. Just the other day, I was writing an article about how the Atlanta Fed Bank released their GDP Now estimate. Guess what that we're forecasting for third quarter growth? 0.5%. That's down from 6% just a couple of months ago. That suggests to me that the economy is barely growing. So you have a stagnant economy and you have skyrocketing inflation, and that's Bidenomics 101, and that's terrible for to get out of this post-pandemic economic recovery. If an auto plant has to close because it can't get its goods, that's a depressant on growth. If inflation's running faster than consumer spending, that's going to impact inflation-adjusted spending, and then if inflation is soaring, then wage growth, that's going to also temper consumer spending. So the consumer represents 2/3 of the economy. That's going to be a disaster for 2022, and perhaps that's going to hurt the Democrats in the next midterm elections.
All good points.
Does anybody else need a drink?
Yeah, nobody's even talking about stagflation yet, but you're absolutely right on. Well, between
I have.
Okay. Andrew has. You heard it here first, folks. Between the supply chain issues and the hoarding, it's going to be a very different Christmas season for sure. Thanks, panel. Well, folks, it was only a matter of time. Parents are pulling their kids out of public schools due to COVID mandates, critical race theory, and what many see as a socialist-inspired curriculum. Kids today have no idea how our government works, how to do math without creating an alternative universe, and putting up with instructors' political views when it comes to grading a paper. As time goes on, our public schools appear to be failing the basics of education. News reports are showing enrollment down all across the nation in government schools, but near to overflowing in private institutions. And homeschooling has taken off like a rocket ship. Any way you look at it, at the numbers, they just aren't good for public schools. Jim, I know you and Heather homeschool. So do you think others have finally decided the vax mandates, the mask requirements, and questionable curricula just might be the way to go?
Well, first off, credit where credit's due. Heather handles most of that. But yeah, our reasons for homeschooling well before COVID really opened the window into what's going on in schools was that we didn't want the state raising our children. And, we were blessed to be in a situation where one of us could stay home and teach the kids.
Does the fight school have mask mandates? Vaccination
Absolutely
mandate?
Not. No, it doesn't. But I do hope that more parents will go this way. I mean, you made the point, this is bad news for public schools, but it may be very good news for American children and for the future of this country.
Andrew, you've got little ones, but they're preschool, right?
Yeah, I'm on the same boat with James. My wife and I were discussing of homeschooling our kids, or putting to at least a private school. If I may brag, my kids are 3, but they're functioning at a 4-year-old level. If I put them in a government-run school, I'm worried that all the work that my wife and I have put in is just going to ruin them. They're going to become like the rest of the other kids, who've been in these indoctrination centers for so many years. But when it comes to school, I think, Terry McAuliffe, who's running for governor, his view that parents should not have any say in how children are taught is exactly how so many government-run schools believe. The COVID really opened the eyes of so many parents when kids were in these Zoom classrooms and the things that kids were taught, and the parents were just right next to their kid, and they realized, what the heck is going on in these classrooms? Why did I know about this before? So COVID was really a blessing in disguise to improve, hopefully, in the future of the education system.
Jeff, you've got a couple of girls in school.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a net positive. But one thing that was interesting to me is that it seems like even groups that traditionally didn't homeschool very often are now homeschooling at a very significant clip. I mean, Black families at the beginning of the pandemic, 3.3% of Black families were homeschooling. By fall of last year, that number jumped to 16.1%. And I can see why. I mean, there are a lot of different issues with schools. I mean, there's the critical race theories issues, there's the vaccine mandates and all that stuff. But Black families are also removing their children because a lot of times they might be in an area where their children experience racism from other children or even from administrators, and the administration doesn't do anything about it. So then they just say, well, forget it. Also, there's the fact that Black families are not confident in our public schools to teach their children what they need to know. So I think this is a great thing. I mean, it almost seems to be like there's going to be more of a movement to not abandon public schools, but to pull your kids out of there, do homeschooling, or if you can get them into private schools, that would be even better. So I think that this might be the start of something very positive.
Jeff makes an excellent point about how abysmal the schools are. A lot of these inner city schools, they have horrible track records of teaching kids. There's a great quote from the great economist Thomas Sowell, and he said that, I think of what an improvement it would be if our public school could just achieve mediocrity. And that's an indictment of how terrible these government schools are. So Jeff is 100% correct on that point.
Yeah, I talked to a friend of mine, Lenny McAllister, who he actually heads the coalition of public charter schools in Pennsylvania. And he went over all the problems that these inner city schools have, and it is atrocious. It's obscene. Like it is obscene. I can't even describe to you the level of ineptitude, the level of corruption, and just the whole cycle of poverty that this helps to reinforce.
Sarah, am I right in saying that you actually live in a one-room schoolhouse?
It's a 2-room schoolhouse with a lot of extra rooms.
But seriously,
but they actually taught subjects there at the time.
Yeah, but seriously, Christian schools are really, I mean, they're overflowing and you have to wait to get in now. And, they're twice as big as they were meant to be.
Well, I think what the pandemic has shown us is that A, teaching is difficult. B, it can be done. And a lot of folks around here have been doing that for a long time anyway. And they have like little support groups of homeschool and their kids still participate in all the sports that they want to participate in, at the local public schools. So it's not like they're missing out socially, but they're sure not getting indoctrinated. And the one thing that I have a friend who has school-age children, and she pays money for books and this and that and the other thing for this public school, and it racks up to hundreds of dollars a year. And those kids never have a book. They can't even track where the books come from. So there's a lot of money going into the public school system from parents and guardians that nobody can account for. So I think that you have come to a boiling point where it's just easier to find a school with stricter guidelines, find a school with some rules and regulations that are not off the charts, to find a school that will teach your child without teaching them your opinion. And that's what's going on.
Well, Andrew, it's interesting because I think the economics of public schools are going to be in trouble. Of course, this is why they've never wanted to support school vouchers. But I wonder if they're going to start mandating public school, like you have to go to a public school,
Well, yeah, they have to justify their $12,000 per pupil per year, the government spending on this, because that's how much they spend. They have such terrible records, but they spend one of the most of all OECD countries. It's absurd to me, because in the end, government schools exist for two reasons: indoctrination of socialist dogma and ironclad jobs for teachers. It's nothing but a public works program for millions of teachers across the United States today. Despite these unions purport, schools are not about the children. They don't exist for the education of children. It's not, well, somebody please think of the children. It's for other nefarious means. The government school system is atrocious. It should be abolished and let the private sector take care of it, because they have a much better performance record of teaching kids than the government ever could.
And Lisa, I think what you said is very predictive. I think that you're on the right track there. I mean, as far as them mandating public schools, they may not do it outright, but they will find ways to force parents to put their kids in public schools. I remember a few years ago, there was a controversy in California because they were passing legislation, and I don't know if they actually got it passed, but they were trying to pass measures specifically designed to make it harder for parents to homeschool their children. So I think that will be the backlash from the statist side when they start seeing more people homeschooling their kids or getting them into private schools. They're not going to take this line down.
Yeah, remember John Stossel? He had all those education specials on his show on both Fox and ABC, and he would speak to the unions, and they'd be so violent about him. They'd be so vicious and say, "Oh, you hate the children. Oh, you're all for corporations. How could you want corporations inside?" But then he provides them a data of how better charter schools are, and they get so defensive about it by saying, "Oh, you want profit before students," which is completely absurd at this time. And also one more thing too: if they have COVID mandates and you don't get the COVID shots for your kids, and they kick you out of school, do you get your taxes back? Do you get a refund on all the money you put into the system? Probably not.
Absolutely
exactly.
not.
I mean, you're stuck funding it one way or another. Well, folks, it seems like we all believe education is in major need of an overhaul, from health mandates to teaching the 3 R's. Let's see if this trend continues. Thanks, panel. With COVID, Afghanistan, inflation, and more in Biden's unified America, your panel of conservatives need to let off a little steam and just have fun. So welcome to Just for Fun and this week's special edition called Let's Get Personal. Well, how well do you know your C5 panel? You're about to find out their deepest, darkest secrets. Ready, panel?
No.
Oh, boy.
Everybody is silenced into fear. All right, so we're going to take you first, Andrew. Go. Pick a number.
3.
Number 3. If you could only take one TV series with you on a deserted island, what would it be?
Jeff knows the answer to this. Everyone at LN knows the answer to this. Seinfeld. Okay.
Seinfeld. Oh yeah, I've heard a lot
What's
about
the
that.
deal with peanuts these days?
Dude,
That's a
nobody
pretty-
likes Seinfeld. Nobody likes Seinfeld.
So overrated.
I can't think of anybody that likes Seinfeld.
We'll be right back.
Jeez. I'd
Sarah,
take 24.
I know your answer. 24.
24.
24.
No, I would just. Well, I'd rather just take Jack Bauer, but I'll settle for the whole series.
The whole cast and crew.
Yeah.
What are you taking, Jim?
Oh man.
I'm gonna. Well, while you're thinking, I'm gonna take a Canadian series called Heartland. Nice.
Oh,
series.
Okay.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
we can do a Canadian series. I'll take Andromeda with Kevin Sorbo.
Do you hate that
Canadian shows are just terrible, especially when
Red
they're produced
Green
by the
Show is great.
CBC. The CBC produced shows are just god awful. The acting, the writing, everything.
one? No, this looks
You
pretty
know-
good.
But you
I
know
like the
why
Red
it's
Green
terrible?
Show.
But you know why CBC is terrible? Because CBC is run by the government. So when the government's involved in something, it's automatically terrible.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, Jeff. Okay, so he's taken number 3. So Jeff, you have 1, 2, 4, 5, and I actually have a 6.
Oh, okay. And just for the record, my show would either be Breaking Bad or House of Cards. But for the number, I will pick 1.
Oh, Jeff
Imagine
picked
that.
1. All right.
Let's move
that-
back.
If there were only one museum in the world, which one would you choose to visit?
The British Museum of Natural History. I really had a good time there. I'd probably do that one.
The British Museum of Natural History. Very interesting. Anybody else have any museum idea?
Smithsonian. I love the Smithsonian. I can spend weeks there.
Okay,
Before
but
I
the
give my-
Smithsonian is like 12 museums. So
I
which,
know.
which
I'm
part
going
of
to
the
the one. I'm going to the ones in the nation's capital.
Oh, because
that
really
narrows it
down.
down. Yeah.
Well, I mean, their exhibits are rotating and they're all fascinating, and so
Well,
just go
Wait
experience
a
what I
minute. Are
experience and
you
move on.
going to Air and Space, or you're going to Museum of Natural History? You're going to Museum of American History? I mean, there's
Probably
a
the
lot
American
to choose
history
from.
one. I'm not a big aerospace. No, yeah, just American history. They had
All
a
right.
really good
I-
exhibit on First Ladies. That was awesome.
I'm going to Musée d'Orsay in Paris, France. But go ahead.
Okay, well, first, if you guys ever go to Toronto, never go to the Royal Ontario Museum. That place is terrible. The outside, the architecture looks like it's, kryptonite from Superman.
Are we going to get letters from their curators? Uh-oh.
But if I want to go to one museum, I'd go to the Oval Office because you can see that real life skeleton sitting at 600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Oh, Andrew. All right. Sarah
Sick
girl,
birds.
go. You
Two.
get 2, 4, 5, or 6. 2?
Two.
What famous person have you ever had your picture taken with?
A lot. Do you want political or
Well, but
rock
which one do you want to tell us about that is going to wow us about you? There's something.
Oh, I don't want to wow anybody. This is current. Colin Powell. I had a nice cocktail with him at Camelback Inn in Phoenix, and we had our photo taken very casual, and it was kind of fun.
Was he a nice guy?
That's kind of current, huh?
Was he a nice guy?
So nice, so brilliant, just a true person that you'd want to meet in a bar, have a drink with, and have a chat with. It was beautiful.
All right. Anybody else got any famous people they hung out with? They got their picture taken with?
I mean, it's
when
easy
I-
for me. Other than Liberty Nation, the only famous person I've ever met was Nigel Farage.
Oh,
that's
okay.
true.
Nice.
We
That
don't
was
get a
a
lot of
fun
celebrities
night.
out in the woods.
That man
Andrew?
likes gin.
Oh, when I was 7, I took a picture of Mickey Mouse.
Nice.
Mickey Mouse. What were you at Disney
Nice.
World or something like that?
Yeah. After my dad died, my mother took us on a vacation. I went to Disney World.
Very cool. I actually had mine taken with Maggie Thatcher, but I hated the way I looked, so I ripped it up.
Oh my gosh,
I
Lisa.
haven't met a lot of famous people, but I did get to take a picture with Dan Bongino at CPAC earlier this
Oh,
year.
that's cool.
Oh, nice.
He's
He's famous enough.
Yeah.
He
enough.
actually spoke at one of our Liberty Speaker Series a long time ago before LN was a thought in my mind. Okay, so Jeff, go. You got no. Jim,
Jim, go.
you have
Jim takes 6.
Jim takes 6.
Yep.
This is actually very apropos you. If you could afford any car in the world, what would it be?
Oh man. That's a jacked up Silverado 3500. Not brand new though, because they're putting so much of this, tracking stuff in the vehicles these days. I'd say mid 2000s.
Oh, so you want one without a chip or with an old chip?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still going to be somewhat computerized, but something that I actually can work on if I have to. And also, I'm not worried about being tracked everywhere I go.
All right. Anybody else? Set of wheels that would turn you on?
Big old Hummer with a trailer hitch.
All right, Jeff.
Oh, I'm not really a car guy. I'd probably go for like I don't know, maybe like a Jeep or something like that. Something fun.
A Jeep, Andrew?
If anyone's seen a Born Identity, I'd want that red Mini so I can go in a car chase in the streets of Paris.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Actually, I just read yesterday that General Motors has released the largest, highest power gasoline engine it has ever produced, just as everybody else is going electric. It puts out just over 1,000 horsepower and around 800 foot-pounds of torque. I'm dropping that in the 3,500.
Well, the EV market is in a bubble right now. But I think that's another segment for another day on C5.
Yeah.
I personally would want that 007 James Bond Aston Martin, which, by the way, we did see the new 007 movie this week, the new James Bond, and it's definitely worth your $12.50, or in our case in DC, it was $19.50. But it was a good movie.
And his cars always have cool gadgets too.
Good movie. All right, so who have we missed? Andrew?
No, you're picking. Seinfeld was my TV series.
Seinfeld.
We missed you. You're the last one.
All righty. I'll pick number 4. But everybody has to answer this. If you were to win an Olympic gold medal, would it be in pool volleyball, ping pong, badminton, or curling? It would probably be in badminton, but I would want it to be in curling just so I could hear somebody say, "Excellent brushing." Anybody else have an Olympic
I'm going to say water volleyball.
Water volleyball? Yeah.
That would be my sport.
Man.
Jeff, what about you?
I would go with badminton. I used to love playing that in high school.
I did too. I love badminton. Played that in our backyard constantly as kids.
Yeah, me too, actually. Yeah, we had a net and we had badminton rackets and stuff.
I've never played any of those games, so I would have to come out from the completely different set of games and win the the international log cutting.
Axe throwing?
Yeah, axe throwing.
Yeah. But anyways, I mean, lumberjack games.
All right. Well, now you know a little bit more about us, folks, and I'm sure you're sorry to know that. But share your answers with us on comments on Facebook and YouTube as payback. We hope you played along with us, and you'll pop over to libertynation.com for a little bit of sanity, analysis, and the very best in political humor. Check out our daily memes. They'll keep a smile on your face. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to surf on over to libertynation.com. Sign up for our new member zone, just $29.99 for the entire year. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank DiOrio, and our executive producer, Sarah Calgill. I'm Lisa K. Donner, editor-in-chief. Thanks so much for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, conservative news where truth matters.